Automobilista 2 just had a huge update, and that update has brought with it a lot of hype from a lot of people. After 9 hours of live streaming the update, I'm going to tell you what's good, what's changed, and what is still bad in Automobilista 2. Gamer Muscle videos is made possible by people clicking the like button, subscribing, and using links like our Fanatec affiliate link in the video description. Thank you for supporting us, thank you for allowing me to be independent. You are actually all responsible for the debauchery that happens here. I hate to say it, but this update is actually game-changing. There has been a game-changing update here. A significant game-changing update, not a superficial YouTube thumbnail title hyperbole game-changing update. This update is actually really fantastic, with the biggest changes coming in the form of AI improvements, handling improvements, the built-in force feedback being better, and the general quality and consistency of the entirety of Automobilista 2 just being a lot better. Everything just feels a little bit more polished and a little bit less all over the bloody shop, which is what we'd got used to with Automobilista 2. Starting off with the biggest positive and what I think is the most significant feature of the new AMS2 update, and the feature that most people will be interested in, especially the type of people that would play Automobilista 2, let's talk a bit about the artificial intelligence and the AI improvements. So far, in terms of testing the AI and doing single player, I've only done a few sprint races with AI, so I haven't fully tested it, but what I have experienced is when setting up a quick race with AI, we were able to have genuinely fun racing. And that was because the AI would drive around the track decently in front of you. They'd be making moves on each other, and it would look really quite realistic how they'd be making moves and battling each other. They would actually attack you if you make a mistake and they overtake you, and they do quite tight and close overtakes. You can genuinely have a nice time racing against the AI in this. Now, I wouldn't say they're completely perfect. You will find the AI that are behind you don't really vigorously aggressively attack you as much as they could do. The AI in iRacing, for example, on the harder settings, are much more aggressive in their overtakes, but the AI as it is right now still puts up a really good challenge in terms of you trying to keep up with the cars in front, and they will overtake you if you leave the door open or you make a mistake yourself. The AI, crucially, at this point in time from my testing, were not doing stupid stuff, and they were not ramming you off the track or doing things that were frustrating and annoying. They were actually just fun to race against. This is the type of AI that you would really like to have in your sort of Forza Motorsports, or, you know, just a good quality racing game. As I say, I wouldn't say it's as good to battle against you as iRacing, and I would say as well the Formula 1 games by Codemasters, the AI is more aggressive in that. They put up more of a fight, but in those sims they can also be a little bit frustrating. And in AMS2 it was just fun racing them, which is probably the most important thing. Now, I do think it'll take a little bit for people to dial in what difficulty is the best difficulty for them, and it will depend on the track and the car they're driving as to what difficulty to use. I did put the aggression on maximum, and I still think on maximum aggression they could have been even more aggressive, because when AI drive into you, it doesn't just punt you off the road, so it doesn't really matter if they're more aggressive. But honestly, I think realistically this is one of the best driving sims that's got AI in it. When you consider the value for money, the selection of cars, selection of tracks, and the quality of racing you get from the AI, as much as I think the AI is fundamentally better in iRacing, iRacing's time model doesn't support basic driving properly at the limit, and iRacing costs £1 billion. So, you know, this is just on another level. I say it's pretty funny that Reza have done this quality of AI, and this absolutely destroys Forza Motorsport and previous versions of Gran Turismo, if you ignore Sophie AI, for example. Like, we've had, see that car go around the outside of us, and then the previous lap, we were actually testing the AI a bit here as well. Previous lap, I went around the outside a bit slower, and a car went up the inside. And this is Alton Park. It's a really tricky track. This car's like an all over the place car. The AI was doing quite impressive moves. So, absolute pat on the back credit for the AI, and a bit of a surprise, really, I don't think anyone's expecting the AI to be as good as it is in Automobilista 2. If you wanted a single-player game to play, even if you're just setting up your own races and you just wanted to race against AI because you hate people, which is perfectly fine, I hate people as well, then AMS2 is probably one of the best sims to do AI racing with now, especially when you consider all the different weather options, the way you can set it up, all the different content, how smooth it runs, and if you're also racing in VR and you want a super immersive, fun race, AMS2 is now the sim for that. So, good job, Reza. That was some shallow YouTube punditry for you. Now, we have the handling, and you'll be glad to know there has been, I would say, significant improvements in the handling of Automobilista 2. Now, I would say, unfortunately, it's still not at the levels, generally speaking, as Rfactor 2 or the first Assetto Corsa in terms of absolute raw fidelity of handling, response, immediacy. It still has that AMS2 overall kind of slidey approach to driving and a little bit sluggish response on the throttle to the steering. It's almost a bit slow motion. It's very controllable, and I'd say it's really nice to drive now. It's how I'd say this would be a good baseline for any driving game. It's very fun to drive, but it just doesn't have that tightness and response that you get from, say, the first Assetto Corsa, Rfactor 2, or even iRacing. Like, one of the nicest things about iRacing is that initial grip that the tyres have before you start getting into slipping iRacing or more slip or sliding more. That initial bite is really satisfying in iRacing. Obviously, its tyres fall apart completely when you slide. I'd say AC even has more initial bite, and even Rfactor 2 has more initial bite, but that sort of transition point in AMS2, it's like almost like you're driving on some kind of extra grippy snow, or like you've got some relatively grippy road tyres. That kind of the grip curve, the slip curve of the tyres still seems a bit weird in AMS2. Not unsatisfyingly weird, very approachable. And I would say with this update, and maybe it's improvements to the default setups as well, the general polish, but with this update, the cars are just not frustrating to drive at all. Even if you like lock up or you do really wrong stuff, the car remains really stable. I would crucially say as well, again, I don't think the handling is perfect. I think it could be better, but crucially, the car doesn't feel super silly snappy on the throttle, if you know what I mean. If you played AMS2 before, you were driving a really weird way on the throttle and then a really overly active way on the steering wheel. It kind of felt like the amount you could rotate the car on the pedals versus the wheel, the accelerator versus the brake, it kind of felt mismatched. Whereas now, it feels to me like you have a good balance between how much you choose to drive from the steering wheel versus how much you choose to drive from the brake versus how much you choose to drive from the throttle, and then being able to go between those and how you balance the car. It all actually feels quite natural now, which is great. That just makes it fun to drive. It makes it feel very consistent. It just seems now to me like maybe the general grip levels are wrong, or the slip curve of the tyres are wrong, but it's fine. Like, this would be, if this is how Forza Motorsport or Gran Turismo or any game, basically, any racing game drove like this, it's fine, it's fun. It's a perfectly fun way to drive. Now, there is quite a big range of quality of content still, in that some cars are really quite good. Like the Porsche Cup car that's in this feels very much like real world cars that I've sat in. But then I'd say like the GT1 cars seem to have you could drive in a very drifty way that's still very fast without burning up the tyres and things. Some of the cars that were absolutely atrocious before, though, now actually seem to drive in a better way. So like the Caterhams seem to drive better, though I think the default setup's not very good. The sort of rookie Formula cars and stuff seem a lot better now. Maybe that's a mixture of force feedback as much as it is setup and the physics, but there's a lot of cars that were absolutely awful. The F3 car in the previous versions was so bad, but now they're actually totally drivable and you can have a really good time with them. Really nice force feedback, tells you what's going on out of the box. You don't need to use custom force feedback. So yeah, you know, I think there's quite a bit of room for improvement. If someone was to ask me as a training tool what sim I'd use, I'd still go for the original Assetto Corsa with a setup mod customised to the vehicle that the person's driving in real life. AC's still, though maybe not as dynamic or as rich in some ways, lines up to how real cars handle at the limit and describes out the force feedback and is quite responsive. I think AC could actually be even tighter and more responsive and more snappy and quicker. You know, the ultimate for me would be like iRacing's initial handling before you slide, then AC's tyre at the limit, then something kind of in between Rfactor 2 and AMS2's tyres in terms of the dynamic conditions and you know, the variable conditions and how they handle and perform over the length of a race. But yeah, so positioning this is kind of like a more slidey Rfactor 2, like a less responsive Rfactor 2, maybe like a slightly richer race room in some ways. You know, it fits into that same general category of current simulators, and especially the Porsche Cup car is a perfectly fine car that, you know, it's great to drive. Just there's still some cars that are a bit weird in this. So yeah, I just think the handling is really nicely done. This update makes it so that the chances are, if you pick something and drive it in this now, you'll have a really good fun time driving it, and you won't come across stuff that just makes you feel miserable or seems like a massive physics hole. Previously you just brake and you're like, oh, that's messed up, or in earlier builds you'd be like, well, where's the lift off oversteer? You know, now everything is kind of there. I just think the general grip levels are maybe slightly a bit weird, or the tyres aren't peaky enough. But on the peaky tyre thing, compared to ACC, where I think the cars are quite nice and pokey in many ways, but there's no depth to the tyres and the force feedback's atrocious in ACC. This is so much nicer to drive than ACC. So, you know, I think on the sort of fun level of driving, personally, my preference would be AC1, but I could totally see how people could still really, really enjoy driving this. And that's probably the most important part of a game, you know. So great job on the handling improvements. We could do some more in-depth handling videos where an idiot that's had like 3 minutes in real cars just make it up, and then you can tell me that I'm wrong. But we can do that more depth. But for that, the handling, 8 tea bags. Well done, Reza. Great, more shallow YouTube punditry for you. Worth actually, before we move on, the built-in force feedback. Previously, I was having to use custom force feedback profiles to get more detail and also to deal with the weirdo physics. Some of the custom force feedback just made the handling easier to put up with. I'd now say to anyone, unfortunately for the people that do the custom force feedback files, I mean, maybe they're even better to drive it with it. Might be, I've not tried them out, but I would say you don't really need to bother with them. You could just use the default plus force feedback, reduce the damping a bit that's in the game, and then set a controller for how strong you want the car to be, how strong you want it to be, and just drive and have a good time. And the force feedback in this, really, really good. It tells you what the car's doing. You can feel the general braking. You can feel the back of the car coming out. You can, you know what's going on from the force feedback. Actually, that does highlight one thing I'd say with AMS2. This is handling as well. It does feel to me like there's no real suspension with the cars. They all drive in a very flat way. Now, I know race cars have very stiff suspension. I've been in a race car, but it still had a bit of sort of roll feel to it. The best way to describe AMS2 is very flat. You can see the cars bouncing up and down, but you don't really feel like you're manipulating the mass of the vehicle, and you don't really feel that suspension compression and roll through the force feedback either, which is something you definitely do feel in Rfactor 2 and AC1 in particular. So I don't know why that's missing. Doesn't seem to be the end of the world. It's still very drivable, but that's just a weird thing that really stands out with AMS2. But maybe that helps you feel more a rawness and connection to the tyres through the force feedback, because you do get very detailed tyre force feedback in this, which personally I really enjoy. I love rich force feedback. And again, we won't talk about ACC force feedback other than, dear God, what happened? I hope AC2 is not that bad. So that's it. Force feedback, fantastic. Handling, fantastic. Could be better, but well, you know, perfectly fun and enjoyable. Moving on a bit to multiplayer, it had been a while since I played Automobilista 2 online racing with subscribers, and since then it did seem to me that when we did the races this time, it seemed at the start of the race there's still maybe some weird desync issues, like whoever's hosting seems to be able to get a better start, or different people seem to start the race at different times, which is a bit of an issue. I think that's something they maybe have addressed and might be working on anyway. But the actual general netcode, car contacts, and smoothness of online was really quite good, considering that you can just host it from your own computer and from within the game itself. And even with me, whilst I'm like live streaming to Twitch and YouTube at the same time at 7 megabits to each, so I don't know what that is, but then also able to host a game, and it works very seamlessly with a nice lobby system. You can also host and also fill up a lobby with AI, so if you just had 3 or 4 friends, you can do that and have a great time racing with AI and your friends. And with the AI being better now, that will actually be way more compelling than it was in the past. I think for what it is, the current online with you hosting it is really nicely done and super convenient, and probably quite a big selling point for a lot of people that want a sim to jump into and just have fun online racing, different cars, different tracks, and maybe mess around a little bit. So I was actually quite impressed last night with the quality of the racing we were having whilst just hosting it ourselves. I mean, maybe miraculously last night people were driving particularly careful. I don't think they were, really. I don't see why they would be. But it genuinely seemed a lot cleaner, and the car contacts and how things responded when driving online was better quality. So again, maybe there's just more underlying polish there, or maybe it was just good luck. But yeah, so that's the online and multiplayer hosting. We need some negatives here. This has been far too positive. You guys will think I've had some kind of concussion, which is entirely possible. Biggest negative, or big negative at the moment, I would say, unfortunately, if you're someone that gets motion sick, it still has the bloody problem where if the car is at like 15-degree angle or more, like say on Road America when you're going up the hill on Road America, or at Brands Hatch, the downhill corner and then the uphill, if you have the car at a 15-degree angle, even if you've got the lock to horizon setting on with the new camera mode, or the old camera mode set to 100%, so it should be 100% locked to horizon, after about 15 degrees of pitch, it then instantly goes from filtering out movements to suddenly being locked to car, and it is really jarring and instant motion sick for me, and probably for a lot of people that get motion sick from that kind of instant locking. Also, in the non-legacy camera, the roll and how that all roll operates, again, is really motion sickness inducing, the arbitrary amount that the roll comes back. Anyway, we've been through this in previous videos. The fix would be increase the amount of pitch the car can have before it hits the clipping point for the pitch filtering. That'd be really nice. Or just allow it to go, remove the clipping point, so we can just pitch 100% up and down, because no track, you're not doing loop the loops, so it's not going to matter too much. Or the ideal thing, the absolute dream, would be if they could set the camera up so it was like how it is in Rfactor 2 now, where it's basically locked to car, pitch and roll, but bumps are filtered. So like Rfactor 2 with the full filtering, or like that's how iRacing is as well. It's locked to car, but bumps and movements are filtered, so that you get a very smooth view of the track, but the camera is still locked to the vehicle. That's the absolute best way to do an onboard camera. It's the most realistic way. It's the closest thing to what it's like being in a real car track. Yeah, that's a shame. That still makes me motion sick on like Brands Hatch, going up and down the hills there, absolute disaster. Road America, say the uphill part of the track, or when you've got like tracks that are a little bit banked, the arbitrary roll that's going on, even at Nürburgring GP circuit. Oh my god, it's just like so arbitrary. They really need to address that. Well, they don't need to. They could just not care for people that get motion sick. But if they really care about accommodating people that are using those locked horizon settings, that's what they should do. If you lock the camera to the car entirely, you won't notice. You'll be used to everything bumping around. You won't care. Please don't comment on this video with camera settings saying I need to do this, I need to do that. Believe me, I've been through every single camera setting in this game. I know exactly what I'm talking about here. It is that clip point, or needing to have a camera filter, or adjusting the way the roll works. I'm not going to go into it any more in this video. I'm going to get comments on people saying, have you tried this camera setting? Yes, we bloody have. So, yeah, you know, without going through stuff more and playing the game more, we've just done an 8-hour live stream. I literally just finished it, going through loads of multiplayer races and a bunch of different cars. But without going into things more, there's not much more I can say. This is sort of the first impressions of the update. And obviously having played this game quite a lot since release, really. But all in all, a very, very good update. And of course, there's also new DLC. I haven't really had a chance to explore it, so I don't want to talk about it in this video. But all said and done, this is definitely worth owning now. The standout part, I think, for a lot of people will be the quality of the AI, and then VR has always been an amazing thing with AMS2, and then if you like really nice shiny graphics that run well, that's another thing that really stands out with AMS2 over many other racing simulators. So you can get it on sale now as well. It's not for the basic version. I don't know how much the full version costs. I don't think you necessarily need the full version, because you can join servers if someone sets up who's got the full version, as long as you've got one piece of the content. I think if they're hosting the track, you don't need the track, as long as the host has got the track. But it's a really nice sim to play. It'll be really interesting to see how things move forwards now. I would really like to see them get things more snappy, more responsive with the handling, and I'd really like to see yet more polish across the cars. And you know, if you go on their dev post, they say what they're working on, and you know, they're doing like UI. I think they're going to work on the multiplayer server, dedicated hosting, a whole bunch of stuff. As always, Reza do keep working on stuff, and you know, the Reza polish, they keep polishing. But that's it for this video, guys. It's far too long. Oh my god, it's been far too positive and far too long. I'm probably overdosing on tea. But thank you very much for watching this. Thank you for joining us in our live streams. As I say, subscribe, hit the bell, click the like button, bang your foreheads with a salmon. Until the next one, take care. Thanks for watching. Happy tea drinking, and goodbye.